Hello, everyone. My name is Deila Ray. I am this year's chair for the Tradeswomen Committee. I want to start by thanking you all for taking the time to be with us today. If everyone could take a moment and share in the chat what chapter you are with and perhaps even what you do for a living so we can kind of get a feel for who is with us today. Also, to make mention, we will have it opened up to where everyone can talk. But if you do have questions, please put that in the chat as we're working through the presentation that we'll have today. So this month's topic is safety and sanitization, so including OSHA updates. Cool piece of information right now, my welding technology classes, since I'm a welding instructor, are currently going through their OSHA 10 training and testing this week, so rather relevant with what we've got going on. We have two amazing women with us today. We have Kathy Dobson, who is the safety director at Alberici Constructors, as well as Marjorie Del Toro, who is the president and CEO of EHS Internationals Incorporated. Thank you both for being here. I would like for both of you as well to share a little bit more about yourself. And I know you have an amazing presentation set up for us today, so I will hand it off to you two to get this rolling.
Perfect. Kathy, want me to go ahead and get started?
Yeah, go ahead.
Perfect. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name, as she mentioned, my name is Marjorie Del Toro, and I am the CEO of EHS International. So we're a national environmental health and safety compliance firm, but I'm really pleased to be here. Some of my background is I've been very active with NAWIC. I'm your past OSHA Alliance Chair. I've also been the Pacific Southwest Safety and OSHA Alliance Chair, as well as my local chapter, Chapter 91, if you're on, woohoo. I'm the safety chair for our chapter as well. So I've been in industry for close to 30 years. It's a long time. So I'm really excited to be here, especially besides Kathy, which she's going to introduce herself and her background, but it's phenomenal. I really feel blessed to be here with her because I'll probably learn from her as well. But I'll go ahead and turn that over to Kathy.
Thanks a lot, Marjorie, and thanks, Delia. I really appreciate it. My name is Kathy Dobson. I am a safety director for Alberici Constructors. I've been with them for just over 25 years, and I've been a NAWIC member more than 20. For probably the past 10 plus years, I've been active with the NAWIC National Safety and Health Committee, the OSHA Alliance, and this year I was appointed by the National Board to represent NAWIC as part of the new OSHA Alliance Ambassador Program. And so I'm honored to be a part of that. And it's great to be here. If I told you everything that I'm doing in safety and health, I would get...
We wouldn't have time for a presentation, Kathy.
I would get upset because I'm thinking, man, you're doing way too much. But I love what I'm doing, and I love the active participation. And I even responded to somebody who sent me a message from NAWIC today. So anybody that wants my email address, it's on the screen. So is my phone number. You'll see it at the beginning and the end. Please reach out to me if you have any issues or any concerns or just want a question answered.
Great. So we're going to do things a little bit different today. So before we get started, I wanted a little housekeeping. We have Savannah, who's going to be our moderator with NAWIC. So she's going to be available to us. So if you have questions, you can post them on chat. If you want to, you have the opportunity to actually ask questions live. So just put your hand up and she'll make sure to unmute you. But today, Kathy and I spoke about this, and we really just want to have a conversation with you. We want to make sure that we address all of your questions, and we thought maybe that would be a better format. We do have some PowerPoints, but they're just kind of to keep us on track. We're not going to go. There's just basic questions that maybe members have asked in the past and pertaining to this subject matter, especially sanitation and obviously the OSHA updates. But just know that we really want to have a conversation. We want it to be, a two-way conversation. And please, if you want to be unmuted, please feel free to do that. I think personally, I get more out of it when I'm able to have a conversation with the speakers. So we're excited to do that. So I'm just going to go ahead and get going unless anybody has anything else to say before I do that. We're good? All right. So well, I'm just gonna go ahead and Kathy's been in industry for a long time, and she's our expert in a lot of organizations, and come to her for advice. So I'm going to turn this straight over to Kathy, to where she'll give us updates on what's currently going on with the regulations and where we are now. So Kathy?
Yeah, I would love to do that. First of all, from a perspective, I live in Michigan. I am currently on a project in Mexico where it's, let's see, my screen says it's 101 degrees. It's mostly sunny. It's quite humid. And so the OSHA standard for heat, illness, and injury prevention for outdoor and indoor work settings was just announced just about a week ago. And it came out in the Federal Registry. It talks about having a program, having administrators, the typical water, rest, shade, and the other components that we can do to keep our workers safe when it's so extremely hot. Providing them with periodic breaks, things of that nature. I'll back up just a little bit and tell you that I was part of the NACOSH, the National Advisory Committee on Occupational Safety and Health, team that made recommendations to OSHA for this particular standard. We were asked by them a couple of years ago to do so. And so we provided some proposed regulatory language. They took a little bit of that information, not a whole lot of it, but I think the standard is pretty comprehensive. The one concern that I personally have is that it's for indoor and outdoor settings. So even though it's a standard that's it encompasses really all the different components: general industry, construction, maritime, and it may not be specific enough for any one of those groups, because of course, if you're working in construction like all of us are, we don't always see the impact that heat might have on a warehouse or on the Amazon driver that's dropping off our packages every day for me. But I think that the impetus for getting this standard out so quickly, and it really it's amazing how fast this turned around. We the NACOSH committee submitted our final proposal just over a year ago, the end of June in 2023. OSHA took it to what they call the SBREVA group. SBREVA stands for Small Business Regulatory Enforcement Fairness Act. And what that is that they asked, I think, close to 100 groups, organizers, companies about how this would impact their business, especially small businesses, because if there's a huge financial impact, OSHA's going to reconsider what they're doing. Well, apparently they got some good news, or they didn't have any real significant challenges to that, because they went ahead with the rule, and very, very quickly, this rule, which went from a year ago, a proposed rule, to a final stage rule, and now it's been published. The public, any one of us, or our organizations that we belong to, have 120 days to now just under 120 days to respond to OSHA to say, we like the rule, we don't like the rule, we think that these things should be changed. The comments have to be in by the end of December. I think this is a huge push for the current administration to get this signed and enacted into law, because as soon as that public comment period is over, OSHA has they can keep on responding, or they can just say, yep, we've gotten comments and we're going to still pass this as a final rule. But I think one of the things that really got them sort of off of, off center was the fact that the A10 consensus committee for construction standards, construction and demolition standards, published a rule in January, the A1050 rule. It's brand new. And it talks about a lot of the things that that this OSHA standard has in place, but it's specific to construction. And the other thing is that when ACOSH, the Advisory Committee on Occupational Safety and Health, met in May or June, they said that they want this expeditiously passed. So OSHA took that into consideration, I think, and they quickly went to publish the rule that again, it was just published last week. So heat, big deal, across the nation. We're losing lives because of heat. I'll just let you know, on this project here in Mexico, there are close to 300 workers, and every single day, the medical team here on site sees probably 20 to 25 people who are experiencing some sort of heat-related symptoms. So it's really pretty significant. But I don't want to continue talking about heat because there's many other things to talk about. In construction, there's a proposed rule for communication tower safety. There is now a final stage rule for PPE in construction. And again, that was something that NAWIC, other women's groups, the CPWR, a lot of the trade unions all supported, because in the construction standard, it doesn't specify that personal protective equipment has to fit. All it says is it has to be provided. In the general industry standard, it said PPE must properly fit each employee, and then there's a training component that goes along with it also. There's no training component to the construction standard. And again, all it says is you got to provide it. So about 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, the advisory committee went to OSHA and they said, we want you to reopen the standard for PPE and include language that says the PPE must fit. And they were really specifically talking about women's fit, but I think that that more in generalities, there are a lot of men that PPE doesn't fit them either. So they made it more I think they're going to make it more general instead of gender specific, and include that same language that the general industry has that says you got to have PPE that fits. Right now, it's in the final stage, and I just looked at the regulations. It looks like they anticipate publishing this as a standard sometime this month, sometime in September of 2024, I think. The notice of proposed rulemaking comments ended last year, just about this time, and so they are working on final language for that standard.
And Kathy, during my
all I have on standards right now.
Yeah, and during my visit on the last OSHA Alliance in Washington, D.C., that was in the forefront of the discussion. So you're absolutely correct on that. It's exciting to see that.
Yeah, I think so too.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions or comments from the audience at all?
Kathy, I was going to share that I recently was a part of a My Body, My PPE campaign that helped promote PPE and the ever needing change of things. So we had a global survey done, and here I believe in January, we'll be coming out with all of the results and the white pages from that to kind of share the deets of what we found out with that. So it's been a cool thing to be a part of, and it's great to see this change happening in our industry for everyone. Like mentioned, it's not just women facing these issues.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many guys I worked with that couldn't zip up their safety vest. It wouldn't fit maybe, you know, so it's a problem across the board, and it's great to see the change.
Yeah.
I do
And
see a question here.
you bring up a great point about that group. I was also part of another group that we wrote a technical report for ASSP on fit for personal protective equipment fit for women. And in that, we addressed all kinds of physical factors, biometrics. We looked at changes that women go through during pregnancy and menopause, and what happens if I have to have a mastectomy. How is my personal protective equipment going to fit me then? It's a published report, came out late last year, and there's another group. It's called ASWAM, and I'm going to get the acronym
I
wrong.
got it for you, Kathy. It's the Alliance of Women's Safety
Yes.
Apparel and Manufacturing. Yeah,
Yeah.
manufacturers, yes.
They recently formed a collaborative effort, and it's a lot of different groups that provide PPE specifically for women, and that fits women and looks good on women. Companies like Xena Workwear and Juno Jones, Dovetail, Serafina. There's a couple of others that I'm missing, but they all provide great PPE for women. Some are Amber, I think, provides fire retardant protection. So there's a lot of groups out there really getting on this bandwagon of yeah. There's a lot of women in our industry, not just in construction, but across the board, that may need FR protection. They all need, protection for feet and things like that. So yeah, I think it's great.
Great. Are we good? Move on, Kathy, or any more updates?
I'm good.
Okay, good. Okay, so what we've done is there's going to be some general questions that's going to be all encompassing, and there's a couple that we'll talk about workplace safety. We'll talk a little bit about legal protection, and then we'll go into the sanitation. I think that's such a hot topic during our discussion while I was in annual conference, and for the folks that were in my classroom, that was a big topic of conversation. So we're excited to be able to kind of address that and get your thoughts. By having this open discussion with our NAWIC members, it also assists us in knowing what to share when we're fighting our battles, right? So it's really important for you to really engage and talk to us. So we're your voice, especially Kathy. She's always been our voice, but she's going to continue the fight. And it's not all a fight. They're listening to us. They actually established a committee just for women now in federal OSHA. So I was really excited to hear that. But this first question is, how can workplaces be made safer for women, and what best practices should companies adopt to ensure a secure environment? So, there's a lot of topics that many of us already know and how we can establish that. One being in establishing a clear anti-harassment policy. And most organizations already have that. And obviously we have to have zero tolerance policy. But one of the things that's, to me, is really important about that is having a clear, comprehensive definition of what that means, what it constitutes, which includes examples of, verbal, nonverbal, and physical behavior that are absolutely unacceptable. So that's one of the topics that we need to make sure within our organizations that we have in place. There's also creating a safe reporting mechanism. That's really important. A lot of companies don't have this, depending on your size of organization, but it doesn't matter if you're small, medium, or large. It's so important to have a safe environment. There's also third-party resources that you can use where they're able to call if they don't want to call HR. So I highly recommend that that's put in place. That it's just really important to have confidential reporting channels. Many of us in women in construction know that we want to have a voice and feel safe to be able to report that. There's obviously, we have regular training and education. So what's really interesting, I don't know if many of you know this, but there's actually a bystander intervention training. Did you know that, Kathy?
Yes, yeah.
I just learned that. I was looking at that. I'm like, I didn't realize there was such a thing, but it's so important to have that. You know, we all want to feel safe and we want to know how can we help. So make sure you train your employees on how to recognize and safely intervene, meaning, you know, how to approach if you see someone that seems in trouble. Obviously, you have to think about your own personal safety, but that was really interesting. I mean, we could just have 1 hour of webinar just on that. I just thought it was quite interesting. So if you're interested in having a webinar on that, just let NAWIC know or put in the chat. I think it'd be a really great training for all of us to know how we can help when we're observing. There's also promoting a culture of respect and inclusion. I think we've talked about that for a long time now, and it's still super important to keep it in the forefront. Part of that is obviously by having leadership commitment, employee engagement. You know, we all know that's super important. And all of this that I'm talking to you about, I have a nice little outline. So if you want a copy of that, you know, just let us know. So I'll be able to forward that to you. I really want to give you as members resources to be able to go back to, because I know we're going through a lot of information. So simply ask for a copy and I'll give all of these. So these aren't obviously off the top of my head. I wish I had that capability, but that left me about 10 years ago, I think. You know, and support work-life balance. I think that's super important, that flexibility of work hours. You know, we don't want to have to work late hours where, you know, it could become an unsafe environment or give you the perception that it might be. It may not, but perception is key and it's important and we need to consider that. So having that flexible working hours, remote working options is really important. I think that's one of the great things. In construction, I think it's hard, especially if you're in the trades, to have that option, but and other parts of construction, to have that capability to actually be able to, you know, work from home has been a blessing. So I know my team, my staff members love that. So we have a hybrid option here in EHS Inc. So what other ones, Kathy? Maybe conducting regular risk assessments. It's really important. Anything else you can think about that?
You know, I had some similar comments jotted down, you know, especially in regards to anti-bullying and anti-harassment. I think from a survey that was done by the ironworkers just a couple of years ago, there are still women at every level, whether they're apprentices or whether they're experienced journeymen, who have experienced bullying or harassment on the job. The ironworkers a couple of years ago started through Vicky O'Leary, a program called Be That One Guy. And it's very similar to what you mentioned about the bystander intervention program, where they have working sessions where they talk to men about how can you get involved? How can you be the person who stops someone from bullying? Because in reality, a lot of times when there's bullying going on the job site, it's one person or one small group who tends to have the power to be invasive and to get into everybody's head and to create that hostile work environment. During the program, they talk about ways to stop, ways to distract people who are bullying, and really just to turn it back on themselves, to say, why would you say something like that? Or what is it that you said? So that they have to reply, which sometimes, especially if they're in a group of people, it sounds pretty dumb when you're in a group instead of just saying it to one single person. You also mentioned diversity, equity, and inclusion within organizations, employee resource groups for different underrepresented teams, the LGBTQ community, whether it's a group of Hispanic workers or whatever the case may be. But when you talk more about how can workplaces be made safer, I also tend to think about the logistics of a project site.
Mhm.
Having security on site, having gates where you have to badge in and badge out. It prevents people, especially, if you're a woman and you're in a bad domestic situation, your harasser can't just come into the work area if there's guards and gates there. Making sure that people go through the site-specific orientation, that they really understand what it means to have a condition of employment where you don't want to see people harassed or bullied. And then there's a few other things as far as logistics goes. I think we're going to talk a little bit about it when we get into sanitation, but really,
Really
women should,
building a supportive community, right?
yeah.
Kathy? Just
And
really,
I think also that if you are the sole woman on a job site, you need to find somebody who's in an administrative position in a trailer, and so that they know when you're on site, they know when you're leaving or when you're anticipated to be leaving. You hate to put the dog tag on you, that's a tracker, but sometimes you need to have that, especially we get into some weird and bad situations, we don't always work in beautiful, clean, safe work environments. Sometimes, you're hearing the gunfire in the background and things like that. And it's not really safe. So why would a woman want to be on a job site by herself in situations like that?
right, I agree. Savannah, you'll interrupt, right, if there's questions?
Yes, ma'am. I don't know if you guys saw the question from Christina a few minutes
No,
ago.
we're depending on you at this point.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, she asked, what is the training component that is being discussed for PPE? Is it specific to the new safety helmets, harnesses, or something else?
Actually, let me see if I can, let's talk about something else for real
Okay, well,
quick,
while she
because
does that,
I'll-
I want to send you all to a website. It's called right2be.org. So write that down, right2be.org. There's some great information on bystander intervention training that I found that I downloaded as well. They talk about there's 5 B's that you got to follow during your training. They came up with direct, they have, I'm looking at my paper, delay, documentation, distract, and delegate. And it's a really good outline for everyone to use if you want to implement some of this training within your own staff. And it's everybody, right? We're talking about women because we're NAWIC, but we're also talking, this applies to everybody, obviously, in their safety. So did I distract long enough, Kathy?
Yeah, I'm almost there.
Oh,
So-
okay. Well, while you do that, I'm going to move forward to our next. Oops, I was there already. Okay.
Okay, I found it.
Okay, go ahead.
Found it. Okay, for personal protective equipment training, it says, and this is under the general industry standard, it's not under construction, so it would be a best practice if we could implement it in construction. It says each employee shall be trained to know at least the following: when is PPE necessary? What PPE is necessary? How to properly put it on, take it off, adjust it, and wear it. The limitations of the PPE, proper care, maintenance, useful life, and disposal of PPE. It also says that each affected employee shall demonstrate an understanding of the training and the ability to use PPE properly, being allowed to perform work before being allowed to perform work requiring the use of PPE. I can tell you right now, that doesn't happen in my jobs. And then it also talks about when the employer has reason to believe that an affected employee who's already been trained You put them through retraining, and you also put people through retraining when there's a change in the workplace, change in the types of PPE to be used, rendering previous training obsolete, or inadequacy in employees' training.
There you go.
So that's what the general industry standard says about specific training. Doesn't really talk so much about, the use of the new helmets or anything like that, although certainly if your companies are implementing that, or if you're being affected by it, there's definitely training that goes, there should be training that goes along with that also.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kathy. So our next question that's come up is legal protection. So what legal protections are available for women facing harassment or violence, and how can they be effectively accessed? So there's a few. We all know the workplace harassment laws, right? We got equal employment opportunity laws that are in place for us here in many countries, but here in the United States. If you go to that, it kind of it guides you on how to file a complaint. So there's always that resource. We also have, oops, hold on. Protection from domestic violence. So that they talk about restraining orders and legal assistance. That's some other resources that we have as well as people, but as women. So we're able to do that. We also have sexual assault and rape laws that are in place. So where that, obviously you can have criminal prosecution with that. There's rape shield laws, and there's a little bit, a lot of detail to that, but there's quite a few different governing agencies and laws that are in place. There's anti-stalking laws that we have, right? That specifically criminalize stalking. There's those laws. We have international protection that it's, there's a whole list on that I can give you, some information on. We have civil remedies, obviously, that lawsuits for damages. There's non-disclosure agreements. So there's quite a bit of protection out there. We just need to know as women where to access that and just be aware that it's available. We also have accessing legal protections. There's free legal representation that we can obtain through the courts, as many of us know. So those are just a few of the legal protections that I came up with and that I was able to find out there that can really assist us. And I think most of us are pretty well aware of them, but it's really important that we remind ourselves that there's so many protection laws out there that we can utilize as resources. Kathy?
I had down the EEOC also. One thing that I understand their rationale, but one of the things that I've talked with OSHA on a couple of situations, how can OSHA do something about harassment or violence? OSHA won't do anything. OSHA does not protect you from harassment or violence in the workplace. That's not in their bailiwick. They want to, they really focus more on conditions and physical, more on the physical barriers and protections that are in place. Employment resources is a great place to get started. If you're feeling as though you're being harassed on the job site, or if you're in a situation where you may be a target of violence, your human resource team may be the best place to get started, and they may be a group that helps you to find the resources that you need. A lot of companies also have employee assistance programs that you can reach out to. But some of those organizations are limited on what they can do and what they can offer.
Yeah, first line of defense should probably be your HR department within your own workplace, if we're talking specifically to workplace. So great. Any comments or anything? We're just going to keep plugging along because time's flying by for us. Okay, so sanitation, that was a big topic of discussion. Here we are. So this is specifically on menstrual hygiene. So how can communities improve access to menstrual hygiene products and education for women's and girls? And I know it says communities, but communities could be a workplace community. It could be outside community. So this is a really, I thought was a really interesting topic of conversation. Kathy, do you want to start on that?
Yeah,
or-
I think it's a great question. And really, I mean, it impacts young women and, girls and young women from the ages of about, I don't know, I know some kids that are starting their periods when they're in the 4th grade, and so there has to be some early education on what to do and, menstrual hygiene. Once you're menstruating, you are now fertile. And so there has to be, I think, some general sex education that goes along with it. But there's a few things that I think that schools and workplaces in particular can do. And for me, one thing that we've implemented within my company is we've put together what I call a period pack. It's available to any woman. We tell people about it during our site-specific orientation, but it's a little closed plastic container that has a couple of sanitary pads, a couple of tampons, some wipes, a disposable bag, so that if a woman is out on a job site, she can get one of these packets. It costs about $4 to put them together, and you can get everything at your local, Target, Walmart, or whatever, and have them available. In the year and a half that we've had them on job sites, we've probably used maybe a dozen of them. People usually come prepared, but sometimes there are emergencies and you don't always have everything that you need. And a superintendent can have it in their truck. And if somebody says, hey, can I, all they have to do is say, yeah, it's right there. There doesn't have to be a lot of engagement, because men don't like to hear the word menstruation. They also don't like to hear the word breasts or, anything like that. But that's a whole different story. Improving access, though, includes eliminating the pink taxes on sanitary products. Why is there tax put on a tampon or a sanitary pad? I don't know. A lot of states have started to implement that and get rid of those state taxes on those products. In public washrooms, there should be supplies that are free. Granted, somebody's going to say, well, if I stock it with tampons, somebody's going to take all the tampons, and I understand that. They have to be monitored, and you have to be conscientious about what you're doing with them. But I think if we can offer them for free, or go back to the quarter in the dispenser instead of charging $1 for them, it's a lot more able for young women and girls to have those products available.
And what employers need to realize that with poor sanitation, what can occur is obviously increased risk of urinary tract infections. If they're pregnant, there's issues with that. They're particularly vulnerable to poor sanitation. I think we really need to educate our employers the importance and why we need to have a clean environment, especially maybe private settings, so we can deal with when we're on menstrual cycles, and so we can address that. So that's just really important. And you're right, Kathy, there is such a limited access to sanitary products out there. I think we need to make it a norm, and many employers are trying, but when you're on, especially for trained women, when they're out there and they're sharing, the bathrooms that they have out there, and they're just, I haven't seen a clean one yet, unless it was just put in. But it'd be really great for it to be part of that scenario, and really make it a safe environment for these women. So, you know, we just want to make sure that that's there for them. And sometimes when that particular topic comes up, it does create a safety and security risk for a lot of the women, right? They're just uncomfortable to have that discussion. There's unfortunately, I mean, we can say we're getting better, which we are, but the industry is what it is. So we're speaking to tradeswomen here. So you know exactly what goes on. So again, impact for dignity is really important for everybody. I think that's one of the topics that really stood out for me. That's really important to be able to talk to them. And again, I have some outlines here that I can send to you that you can forward to your employer to be able to let them know the importance that, you know, how important it is to improve access to safe and private sanitation facilities for us. So, and that's
Do you
what
have
I
a
mean,
question?
sure.
She asked, is there any current legislation or ongoing discussion regarding the requirement for female designated on-site restrooms?
In some states, there are requirements. In most states, there are not. And it's entirely up to I would call them the general contractor who's providing the portable toilets on job sites, whether or not they're going to designate a certain number or a certain percentage to their female audience. There's regulation in Ontario, I know that says you must provide a specific number of portable toilets. California has regulations, probably the states along the West Coast all have similar requirements. Sometimes the state of Minnesota, which is a little bit more OSHA type progressive, will sometimes have something like that. But people are shocked when you tell them that you are on a job site where there is no designated toilet for female or even a unisex toilet that can be used by maybe a gender fluid individual or whatever. Most of the time we have toilets for women and they have to have locks and keys because it's the only way that they can stay relatively clean, because as a man told me, well, we're a bunch of pigs. That's not my words. That was their words. And they do nasty things in bathrooms, and I can't believe that they don't really care, but there's definitely some issues with the use of portable toilets on job sites. I could talk a lot about portable toilets.
I know we could, that's a hot topic for sure. No, that was a great question on policies, because there really isn't. You know, while I was doing my research, I know in Scotland, it's the first place where they actually made it free for sanitary products for women, and that just came into effect in 2020, I believe. So that was interesting information. So we really, that's one of the key topics, Kathy, that we can really, you know, talk about when we're up with Washington, D.C. to start that, you know, that policy and that discussion. That's really important. So some of the things that I saw is,
Way to go, Adina.
What's that?
I'm looking at one of the comments and I'm saying, way to go, Adina. Thank you.
Oh, what'd she say? I'm not even
She
looking
said,
at
I'll be
them.
glad to join your fight.
Oh, yay! That's what we're here for. Everybody needs to join that fight. So one of the key things we need to look for is gender sensitive sanitation infrastructure, right? That's super important. To talk about design and accessibility at work sites, public institutional facilities, even kind of come into that. I think it's really important. There's also menstrual hygiene management. I don't know if you've heard of that, but there's provisions of sanitary products. You know, governments and organizations should implement policies, right, to be able to help us with that. So that's why we're NAWIC strong, you know, and we have a voice in industry. So I'm excited to see what we can do. There's also could be policy integration within organizations that we could talk about, you know, making sure that we talk about these policies within our own organizations. It doesn't necessarily have to be the law, but it's It should be, obviously, but it's really important that we talk about just the effects it has on women and pregnant women. So obviously, we're gonna have to start the legal framework. And that's gonna be key, so we can, you know, keep that fight going. Community involvement and empowerment is really important. Part of what we do as safety professionals, provide the training, right? Making sure that we're out there and just really making sure that industry knows a lot of these. So those are just kind of some of the topics that I, you know, looked into, and that would be really key components and start the discussion, especially, you know, within our, not only our own organizations. We don't need to wait on OSHA on that, right? It just seems like common knowledge. It should be happening anyways, but to keep that discussion going.
Well, I think that that's, I mean, you bring up some really great points. One of the things as a safety professional, unfortunately, a lot of times we don't get looped into things until after stuff's already on site. But one thing in talking with the portable toilet organization, and I don't know if that's the right name for them, but there is a group that just focuses on portable toilets, is that when toilets are ordered from your distributor, you can get them without a urinal. You can because the urinal is actually an add-on. So if you order if you order 1 or 2 urinals and you designate them for women, then we're not sitting down with that thing, that stinky thing right in our face. It's
true.
I mean, it's so simple that, I mean, like, it's so simple that it's hard. But when we start to talk about, you start to talk about sanitary facilities, the one thing that I have been advocating for a number of years, with different companies and organizations, is that both men and women at some point during their biological breaks that they have to take, they have to sit down or squat, whatever, but there's a seat in the toilet for a reason, because they want you to sit down. In the wintertime in Michigan, to use a toilet and sit down, you have to literally strip down. First of all, you have to take off your jacket, then you have to undo your coveralls or your bibs. You have to drape, somewhere you have to find places for the straps, instead of on the floor. Why don't we access the handicapped toilets? They give you a little bit more room and space to at least be able to turn around and take off your gear and put it somewhere other than like on your lap when you're sitting down and doing your thing.
Yeah.
Making
that-
sure that, you're not looking at the label on the inside that says this toilet is designated to be cleaned once a week, but it also has some other specifications, in regards to, it's for use for 10 people for a week.
If you say it should be cleaned once a week, I would die. Sure, it's not every day.
Well, that's what the regulations say. I mean, the regulations don't say it. The portable toilet people say it. It's
Right.
It's embossed in the little the plastic. But OSHA has some regulations about the number of toilets that you need on site, which I think is way, way, way low. If you look at the regulations, and I've been trying to figure out this regulation for years, but if you have 200 people on site, you only need like 4 or 5 toilets for 200 people
That's insane.
that are all using the toilet at the same time, because that's when everybody goes on break, because at the same time. And they are filling up quickly with biological product. I'll just,
Well, bottom line, now that we have a group in OSHA and the construction division focusing on women, that's certainly a great discussion to bring to the forefront for them. And I know they've
Yeah,
already
for
heard
sure.
about it a few times, so that'll be good. I'm kind of bypassing because the previous one, safe sanitation, because it's all about cleaning. We already know that. We kind of touched upon it a little bit. But I thought this was an interesting question, sanitation and violence. So how does a lack of safe sanitation facilities contribute to violence against women? And what strategies can address this issue?
This was interesting to me when I saw this question. I'm not sure that it's all about the facilities.
Right.
What I am sure about is that if your sanitary facilities are not clean and safe for a worker, certainly it's a respect issue, which in turn can lead to a issue of, "Well, if they don't respect you, then why would they treat you in a safe and respectful manner?"
And I
You know,
think,
looking
yeah,
at the, like, I mean, like, you look at the graffiti in the toilets, um, and I'm an advocate for standing in front of a toilet and saying, "Hand me your Sharpie," before you go in there. But, when you see the violent graffiti that's in the toilet, um, that's when companies have to respond and act very quickly to go back to that, those comments that we had earlier about anti-harassment and bullying.
so one,
But when
yeah,
we
go ahead, I'm sorry.
but when we talk about safe sanitary facilities, for women, they have to be in well-lit areas. They have to be behind gates or behind fencing, so that somebody can't just walk up on them. Brightly lit. It's
Areas, and that's exactly what this question is talking about, because a lot of the sanitation facilities, we'll call them, they're in isolated areas, right?
Right.
So when they're in isolated areas and it's dark, especially when you're working after dark, it really becomes an uncomfortable situation where violence can occur. So I think that's kind of where the question, and
yeah, I
we
kind of
found
think
this
it is too.
thought-provoking too, going, where do we go with this? There's lack of privacy, right? At times too, like it could be isolated, but then it could also be in a very busy place where there's lack of privacy. That makes it, vulnerable for voyeurism is one of the things that came up.
Sure.
Harassment and unwanted advances. So things we just don't think about that actually occur. I mean, you go to concerts and you can see that happening, the whole time at concert. So, I mean, it's truly could be a volatile situation if you're not careful. So I just thought that was just interesting. Obviously, the only ways to improve that is like you were talking about, Kathy, is better being aware of where we're putting them. If it's late at night, make sure we have appropriate lighting, make sure it's a safe, accessible location for everybody involved, right?
Well, and I absolutely think as women, we need to be very conscientious about our own situational awareness. And if we are, starting work and we're on, especially, you're on second shift or you're on the third shift, where are they at?
Right.
Find out where they're at. If you have a concern about it, people have the right to speak up and say something if it's not safe. Is it always acted upon? No, because a lot of times, you speak up about something that's not safe, or speak out about something that, you know what, the portable toilets for a woman should probably really be under this light here in this work area. And they're like, "Oh, yeah, thanks for your comment. I'll have your check at the end of the shift." I mean, it's one of those things where a lot of
Right.
women are afraid to speak out. Men and women both are afraid to speak out.
Mhm.
I just saw a comment about the open top toilets. Oh yeah, I've been there, done that too. And that's another situation for the voyeurism and the taunting and the the sneak peeks, that you can get into.
Right. So we're gonna do one more question, and I thought this was great, cultural sensitivity, so how can sanitation and safety initiatives be designed to be cultural sensitive while still being effective? So this will be our last question because we're down to the wire, and I believe Erica had a few words to say, and and Delia. So, but I found this really important. So I did a little bit of research on this, and it says conducting thorough cultural assessments, right? Engaging with the community before designing any initiative. Cultural mapping they talk about, which says identify cultural practices, taboos, and gender roles that influence how sanitation is perceived and used. For instance, understanding how different groups view privacy, modesty, and gender segregation in the context of sanitation facilities. I mean, this can go on and on, obviously, you know, but there are different, you know, everybody has different practices, and we don't think about the cultural differences, which is actually a pretty important topic, but how do you address all of that at the same time? You know, I think it's one bite at a time, right? Let's get lighting at this point. Let's work towards that. What's other ways we can go about doing this? But I think doing inclusive planning, maybe with the women and the tradeswomen, and like, what would you like to see that would make you feel safer? And having that conversation. It's always about communication and providing a safe environment for all cultures. But that's something we don't always think about, because there are different practices on how they use the restroom. I mean, I've seen it, right? Which cleaning methods do they use? Or, I mean, we really need to be sensitive to a lot of that. So I just thought that was kind of a great question, that just thought-provoking. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I love this question, and I think that it's really important to know your community, know the
Mhm.
community that you're working within, and also to respect that community. That's all I got to say on that.
Mhm. Bottom line. Any thoughts from anyone out there in the chat? Well, we'll go ahead and, are you good with us ending it on this question? And then providing, I believe you had some conversations you want to have, or some information you wanted portrayed to the committee, Delia? Erica?
Yeah, you guys, that was great. Awesome questions. I mean, they really covered a broad range of dynamics that we face in industry. So awesome information, great interaction, you guys. This is really cool to see. You really nailed, honestly, the majority of things. I liked the updates that you had talked about. I even seen there is a new proposed rule, like you talked about the heat injury and illness prevention. That is a 2,273 page document. That's a big document. I was working my way through and I'm like, I don't have the time to read this, trying to find, you know, all the great information in it. But it's out there. The updates are made monthly as well for OSHA releases, for any of their immediate release. This is also recorded. And as Marjorie was discussing, they'll share information. So Savannah, I'm not sure if those registered, if you would be able to push that information onto them as well. That would be awesome. Also, we have Erica Braxton here as well today. She was our past chair and I was her co-chair. And so I definitely want to give Erica a moment as well. Do you have any information or details you want to add in these last few minutes today, Erica?
Oh no, this was awesome. But I want to give a tip as somebody who uses the porta potty on a job quite often, because I'm a tradeswoman. I tell everybody, if you can, have a little Ziploc of your own personal tissue inside the top of your hard hat, because those porta potties sometimes it may be clean and you might get there and there's no tissue inside. So I always tell everybody, don't rely on that. Just, have your own. Just a little tip.
Good tip, Erica.
Excellent. Excellent. Wonderful. Well, unless anyone has any other questions, anyone from the
I do have
attendees?
one other comment.
Yeah, Kathy.
On the OSHA webpage, there is a section that's for women in construction. And several years ago, the NAWIC OSHA Alliance group put together just some simple sort of bullet points on sanitation, and it's available bilingually. I don't know if that's a word. I think it is.
Sure. It is now, because Kathy
Yeah,
said.
right.
Okay, well, again, thank you for the invitation. I'm really excited to be here and, you know, I'm always working in the background for all of us as well. Again, if you want a copy of the presentation or you want a copy of my notes that I have some details, just go ahead and email me. The email's there, or put it on the chat menu and I'm sure I'll get a report of that and I'll make sure that I get that over to you. I think I saw one more chat. Are we good?
Yeah, it looks good. You're just getting a
Yeah.
lot of thank yous, and thank you for fighting the good fight. Adina said that,
Great.
but absolutely great session. Thank you all for being here today. Don't be afraid to share the webinar, share the recording, get this information out there. Please know that we meet typically the first Thursday of every month, 4:30 Central Standard Time. So look out for our coming webinars, and I hope to see you all there. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you, Kathy.
Bye.
Thank you, Marjorie. See
My
you,
pleasure.
Erica. Bye, Savannah. Thank you all.